I'm going to start, as always, with a piece that features the trumpets, the big brass trumpets that you see sticking straight out of the organ case. This is called Festive Trumpet Tune by David German. Last week I took several people behind the scenes to see the pipe chamber. We'll do that again this week. But one of the questions was about the trumpets, and they have their own wind supply. The trumpets are fed a higher pressure wind than the entire rest of the organ. So the main organ is fed a high volume of air at a relatively low pressure. And then the trumpet's exactly the opposite, a low volume of air at a very high pressure. So as you can see at the last chord, I was playing a very loud chord, and still the trumpets were able to be heard easily over the full organ sound. So the trumpets have their own wind line that goes right across the back of the facade, the grille work here that you see behind me. I'm going to change gears now and take us to a piece by Johann Sebastian Bach. This is a transcription of the orchestral suite in D, orchestral suite number 3. The subtitle of this, as you may know already, is Air on a G string. This very famous movement from this orchestral suite. one of the things I love about this organ is the variety of stops that we have to choose from. And on that last Bach piece, it's awfully fun to be able to have the solo be sometimes from the front organ and sometimes from the back balcony. And that's just a really wonderful feature of this instrument. This next piece I'm going to play for you is by Robert Elmore, who was an American organist and lived and worked in Philadelphia for most of his life. His parents were missionaries, and he was born in India, but then they moved to the States. But he's well known for writing these very colorful pieces. This one is not based on a hymn tune, but many of his pieces are. And later in the series, I'll play in a transcription of Beneath the Cross of Jesus of his. But they're always very colorful. This is a piece entitled Pavan, and I just love it because it shows off so many different stops on this organ. So it's kind of a meditative piece, and I hope you enjoy this. Pavan by Robert Elmore. That featured clarinet stops and the French horn at the very end, and the low rumble of the pedal on the last few notes with 32-foot pedal stops. That gives that very, very nice extra weight to the last chord. This next piece is also meditative, but based on a hymn tune. This is a setting of Wondrous Love by another American organist, Dale Wood, who lived and worked out in California for many years, most of his life, and is famous for writing these wonderful hymn tune transcriptions, and it's very colorfully done. This Wondrous Love, just to bring your attention to the end of it, I'll be playing the melody with my feet, and the sound will be coming from the back organ at the very last setting of it. And so you'll see that I start the melody in the hands, and then it's like an echo, like a round, with the melody in the feet. So this is Wondrous Love, setting by Dale Wood. that piece also featured the softest stops on the organ. I always play loudly on it, but not often that softly. So you got to hear some of the really pretty soft stops on our wonderful Ruffati organ. A couple of small things about what I'm doing on the organ before I start a piece. You may see me kind of lean over to a little box over there on the side. That the organ is controlled by a computer memory system, and when I set up the stops I need for each piece, they're saved in a numerical location. So I'm kind of dialing up the number that I've saved that particular piece to, and then each button on the organ, you see underneath the keyboards, is a recall button. So I set a certain combination of organ stops to a specific button. So when I'm changing stops quickly, I push the button and instantaneously stops go on, stops come off, and the color of the music changes. So each piece has its own memory setting, and so I write them down, at the top of the page what number it is. So that's what I'm doing when you see me lean over there. The black pedals that look like accelerator pedals are pedals that control giant louver doors. Some pipes are in what we call enclosed divisions. They're inside a gigantic box, and on the front of the box are doors, like slats, that open and close, and they let more sound out. So it gives the impression of the pipes getting louder or softer. So I'm simply just letting the sound out. The pipes always play at the same volume. It's just kind of trap the sound in a box and then let it out. This organ has 3 divisions that are enclosed. There's a tower on the left side and a tower on the right side that you can't see, but they're behind that facade pipes. And then the back organ is also enclosed. And so that's what those pedals do, except for the one on the far right-hand side, and that one's called the crescendo pedal. And that one works by adding stops. As I push the pedal down, more stops come on. And I've pre-programmed that as well. There are 60 positions of that pedal, and as I move it, it puts on the stops that I've programmed in sequence. And so you'll see a little bit of that in this next piece. You'll see me reach over to the right-hand side and start to increase the volume. And it used to, before computers, it used to work kind of like a music box. So if you ever watched it and you saw the inside of a music box with the cylinder with the little pegs on it, it used to work that way on the organ. As you moved the pedal, more pegs made electrical contact, and then that would activate the stops. So this now is the same thing, but just done digitally. The organ is it's all every signal I push. Well, let me back up. When I push a key, I'm sending a signal on a data cable, and that goes instantaneously through a series of relays to a little electromagnet which is underneath every pipe. And on that electromagnet is a stopper that holds the air back from going into the pipe. When I activate that magnet, the stopper is drawn down, and then the pressurized wind rushes up into the organ pipe that I need. So it's a wonderful combination of modern technology and old world craftsmanship. All of this woodwork is done by hand. All the pipes that you see in the facade are handmade. The team in Italy takes ingots of lead and tin, that's what these metal pipes are made of, and melts them down into sheets and then folds them into the proper shape for each pipe over a wooden mold, and then they're hand soldered down the seam. So those of you who come to see the organ pipes up close, you'll see all the hand soldering and hand joinery work and the beautiful inlay that they've done on the organ console. Anyway, I have one more piece for you to play for you today. It's Toccata by Eugene Gigoux, who's a Frenchman, lived and worked in Paris, and this is one of his very famous pieces, Toccata in B minor.